We're going to talk a little bit about SQL Report Writing. Mainly, we're going to focus on this is version 2016. So, how many of you actually do report writing? How many of you are going to actually consider doing report writing once you leave here today? Is that why he sent you guys to do report writing? Anybody do databases? Okay, so what we're going to look at is we're going to take a look at a little bit of the SQL report writing features. So what I actually have, really small, is going to be just some of the, just some of the ways to get your data out of SQL. We're going to look at the built-in SQL report writing services. We're going to talk a little bit about BI, which he mentioned earlier, business intelligence. So there's also Power BI, that's a tool that's used for dashboarding. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Report Builder and Visual Studio that's also going to be used to design a report. So we're going to look at a little bit also when I demo the actual interface. The interface with SQL report writing has changed a little bit. They've added some new features. So we have a class. It is not a week-long class. I want to say this is a 2-day class now. They've kind of condensed it. It used to be anywhere from 3 to 5 days for report writing. We can shorten it even more. We can make it longer even more. But it focuses just on the report writing aspect. So for the actual class information, this is pulled from the class information, business intelligence, the platform that Microsoft uses, and reporting services as well. So for anybody that does SQL, when you install SQL Server, during the install or even after the install, we can bring up the report writing services. Report writing services are built in, the web interface is created, and the reporting database is created as well. And that can be for as many instances of SQL that you actually bring up. Now, with this, big data. Okay, so everybody's concerned with their data. Everybody wants real-time data. And with SQL, we're also going to talk a little bit that this does integrate into cloud technology. Anybody in here using cloud now? Office 365? Anybody? Off a little bit. So we're going to talk about on-premise versus Azure as well. So with our reporting, getting the data out, that's what the big concern is. How do we get the data out? How do we put this in a report? And how do we make this data available real time? And then the analyzing of the actual data. Now, I'm not going to get into multi-dimensional data analysis, cubing, but we do have the ability to do that as well. And then I'm going to show you how this also integrates into SharePoint. How many of you using SharePoint? How many of you like SharePoint? Not sure yet. Okay. So trends in business intelligence. So self-service reporting. Now, when we use that term self-servicing, basically the challenge is, okay, you usually have two different groups of people. People that know the data and people that need the reports. Generally speaking, the two are not the same. So the people that actually need the reports, they're told, well, go ahead and generate the reports yourself. People that understand the data say, well, we don't know what you want in the report. We just know the data. We manage the database. So the concept here is to be able to get the people that need the reports an easy way to actually run the actual report. So that's what we're going to look at with self-servicing reports. And then we have the adoption of what is business intelligence. So big fancy term. Generally speaking, when you generate reports, the report is not for you. The report is always for somebody else. So when we talk about business intelligence, your boss has always said, I need a dashboard. Anybody familiar with that term, dashboard? So I want to see these nice gauges, these pretty pictures, because I don't want to actually have to read the data. I want to visualize the data. So that's what we look at when we talk about business intelligence, and the ability to take that and make it into a nice, pretty area where all of the data, we put it in a dashboard, and we have what's known as key performance indicators to go with that. So I'm going to show you how that actually looks as well. And then with Microsoft, we have what's known as out-of-box solutions. So basically, what you guys are seeing, none of this is customized. All of this is directly out of the box. So we can go in and we have tools that help us customize it for our actual environment, but what we're looking at is definitely out of the box. So for Microsoft, this is going to focus on SQL 2016. Azure SQL database is going to be their cloud-based SQL services. And then we have Microsoft Power BI. Anybody familiar with this tool? You worked with that a little bit. So with Power BI, this is a tool that helps you to build real-time dashboards. Now, what's really nice about this is we have multiple ways to access this. One, there's a desktop app to use to build and to view it. Two, there's a cloud solution where we can upload into the cloud so people can access it no matter where they are. And thirdly, there is a mobile app for people that are on the go that need to access this even via their smartphones. Okay, and then we're going to work a little bit with Microsoft Office because no matter how much you love database technology and SQL and Access, we can never leave out Excel. We always have a need for Excel. So we're going to look at a little bit how do I get that data into Excel. Now, with our business, our BI semantic models, we got multi-dimensional models. We're going to do a little bit with a tabular model today, and then there's also what's known as Power Pivot. So for those of you that work with pivot tables, there's a way to actually get our data into Power Pivot, add columns, remove columns. Pretty much we're going to make the data look the way we want before we actually put it into a pivot table. So we have the Power Pivot models as well. And our tools that we're going to use for common scenarios, of course, SQL Server, Power BI, and mobile access. We're going to talk a little bit about as we go as well. Some of the considerations for SharePoint. So if you guys use SharePoint, we can take our building tools for reporting integrated into SharePoint. So we don't have to actually have two separate web applications to access. Now, for those of you who do not use SharePoint, we still are going to have that web interface where we're going to do all of our work from the web interface to access our reports, to secure our reports. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens when you secure a report as far as somebody actually being able to see that report. So we got our front-end services, we got our database running in the background, and then we have our reporting services as well. Now, these are some of the 2016 features that are only available in what's known as native mode. Okay, so we got two modes. We got native mode and we got SharePoint mode. Native mode assumes that you're going to run your reporting services outside of SharePoint. So there will be a separate web interface to access the data. Or we use SharePoint mode where we integrate. So these are only going to be available in native mode. So they've updated the web portal, which we're going to look at. They've updated the accessibility for mobile reports, and they've added key performance indicators now that are built in. Okay? The three tools that we're going to look at, we're going to look at Report Designer. Now, when we say Report Designer, this is where we build our reports through Visual Studio. Okay? We have Report Builder. This is integrated into the report writing services. And then we have our mobile report publisher, which also integrates Power BI with that. Okay? That is the extent of my PowerPoint. Okay? Like I said, no depth by PowerPoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the actual interface first, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our data and how important that actual data is. Okay, so let's see. Let's open up our web interface. So this is the SQL Server report writing services. Now, anybody that's dealt with the earlier versions of this, they have changed the interface totally. Okay, so this comes with SQL 2016. So this would be the interface, okay, and we can browse what's out here. We're going to talk about the new items that can be built. How do I upload an existing report and add it to our web services? And then how do I actually hide items as well? So let's take a look first of all at some of the actual sample reports that are built in. So I've got some sample reports. So let's do, for example, I got a report called Customer Near Stores. Remember, this is all web-based, and then as I go, I'm going to show you how we're going to change this to modify some of this. Now, because these are sample, they're going to make recommendations on how you should build this. So basically, I got a basic report, and in this report allows me to choose a store location. So we have parameters. So for example, if I want to do professional sales and service, and the distance is miles, so I'm trying to see customers that are near a particular store, I change my parameter, I say view report, and it actually runs the query in the background and then generate the actual report. Okay? Now notice, got a lot of actual customers here that are near this store. Now, right here, it tells me that I have multiple pages. Got a question mark because we don't know how many pages there actually are until it actually gets to the end. So if I tell it to go to the very end of the report, it shows me that I have 39 pages. Okay? And this changes because when you run this report, if new information has been added to the database, the query will run to show the new information that's been added automatically. Okay? So this is our some of our sample reports. Now right here, let's call you breadcrumbs. So your breadcrumbs are going to allow you to get back to where you were easily. So we're going to go back to our sample reports and we're going to look at employee sales summary. So in the employee sales summary, okay, so now what we have in this one, we've added some graphics to this one. So we actually have the comparison for seasonal sales by year. We compare sales to quota. So we actually have KPIs built into this one. So the KPIs are going to be our key performance indicators. And then we actually have our charts. Okay, so we got a column chart, we got a bar chart to go with this as well. This is based on the actual employee. So I can actually change who it is that I want to look at. Okay, I can specify a year, I can specify a month, and I can specify the category quotas, for example, accessories, bikes, clothing, components. All of this is actually built into the sample data. And this generates it for this particular salesperson in this particular time frame. Okay, pretty nice, huh? Let's see, let's go back. Let's go to home and let's look at reports. Now this says builder. So this is going to be reports that were used with the builder tool that's built into SQL reporting. And then we're going to look at reports that were built by the designer. So these are builder reports, and then we're going to demonstrate how that goes. So this is USA sales by state. Let's see what this one actually looks like. So this one, real simple report. Okay, so sales by state with respect to the years, so 2010, 11, 12, and 13. And this one has multiple pages. Okay, so I got 2 pages. Now, here's what's really nice about this tool. So one, data is visible in a browser. However, there may be a need to get this data out of the browser into a different format. Very, very easy to do. So with this tool, we click on the drop down and I can do an export. So if I want to drop this into an Excel workbook, there we go. Okay? So it actually drops it right into Excel, just that easy for me, can be edited. Okay? Pretty easy, isn't it? All right, let's do another one. Let's see, build a report. Let's go and do a report that was built with Designer. So what Designer actually is going to be reports that are done with Visual Studio. So now, when you install a version of SQL, there's also a light version of Visual Studio that's actually included as well. So we can actually build these reports in Visual Studio, upload them to the web server so that they'll be accessible for the users. So this one, I got a report called Reseller Sales. Let's see what this one actually looks like. And what happens is the first time you actually run the report, it's going to initially take a couple of seconds or so longer. And then that report is going to be cached in RAM on the server for a small period of time. And then it will be removed and then it will be refreshed. Okay? So you get to dictate the caching time as well. So we run this report. Here's reseller sales, and this one has multiple pages as well. Let's see how many we got here. 1194. So this pretty much tackles everybody. Okay, and you notice it's done by state, by reseller name. At the end, I'm going to show you how we can limit this by building in parameters to our reports as well. Okay, mobile reports. These are nice. So this is going to be where we do our BI to build our actual reports. These reports are considered interactive as well to a point. So for example, gauge report. So we take a look at our gauge. This is what I would call, so the other simple reports, that's a $250 report. All right, now we're moving to the $500 to $1,000 report. I say that because years ago I used to do report writing services for Blackbaud. And when you did custom reports, they actually charged the customer $250 an hour to build reports. Now once you build the report doesn't need to be touched again. The report runs off of the queries. So the amount of time you spend on the report. So I used to tell people, here's the difference between a $250 report and a $1,000 report. So when I take a look at these, so this is my total sales KPI. Okay, so this one shows a gauge. Okay, again, KPI, so this shows us that we're in the green, which means that we have met or exceeded what we expected to do. Okay, I also have a report that shows, look at this one, that's a funnel report. It's pretty cool, isn't it? We've got total sales with a thermometer. So there's different designs that you can actually build into these. And remember, these types of gauges for this report, the data sits on the back side. So when the data actually changes, the results here automatically change as well. Okay, so this is pretty much as real time as you're going to get with these. Okay, let's do this one. Time Navigator. This one's pretty cool. So what this one does is it looks at sales with respect to a location within the actual country. Okay, and this one is interactive as well. And this one might take a second to load. Here we go. So how about this? So this shows all. Okay, so now I got 2011, 12, and 13. So if I click on 2011, okay, and hit that light for me. I don't know what that's gonna. A little better? Okay. So when I hit 2011, this is actually going to change. Okay? So if I do 2012, it's going to lighten or darken with respect to, and I'm sorry that this is such a bad picture, but here's our legend here. So these are going to change with respect to where you are for that particular time period. Now this is 2012. Now I can actually widen or shorten this as well. And if there's any changes, it will make the adjustments automatically. Here's 2013. So not a lot of changes there. So I can go across and do it this way as well. And if there's any changes to be made, it'll make them when I make the changes here as well. Okay? When I click on a particular year, so let's do this. All right? If I click on a particular month, now, and this report had some problems earlier, evidently, but what it actually does is it breaks it down into weeks for you as well. Okay, so, and I'm not sure why this one, either there's no data for it or there's a problem with it, but the way the tool would work, we could break this down all the way by the week. If the data is there for it, it's going to change automatically as well. Okay, so these are some of the mobile reports that are actually available. Let's do one more. This is called a tree map. Okay, so what this one shows is, for example, here's our consumer discretionary, consumer staples, financials. So for example, if I click on automobiles and components, it's going to change it interactively. If I do consumer There we go. If I look at media, so this one is interactive, so it actually changes for what I'm actually taking a look at. That's pretty cool, isn't it? That's like a $1,000 report there. All right. Okay. Everybody good so far? All right, hit that like for me again, please. Thank you, sir. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at our data first. Okay, so for those of you who do report writing, here's your challenge. There's a couple of challenges. The person is asking for a report. Sometimes they don't know what they want. So it's your job to figure out or decipher what they're actually telling you. Okay? 2, when you run your reports, understanding your data is going to be critical. Okay, now this is sample data that I'm working with, so I don't even know my way around this data a whole lot. I understand how the tool works, but understanding your data to get that data out in a format that somebody else is going to understand is always going to be the challenge. Okay, there's a concept that goes with report writing and database. Garbage in, garbage out. Everybody familiar with that? And what that actually is sometimes the data that's in the database or the lack of data that is in the database does not manifest itself until you actually run a report. And then you truly see where all of the holes actually are. And when I say holes, sometimes those holes are not actual missing data. Sometimes it could be something as simple as nobody used proper case for somebody's name. So now we got somebody's name that's all lowercase. Well, this is report writing. So what we want to do is we want to fix the problem. We don't want to put a Band-Aid on the problem. So it means I need to go all the way back to the database and make the changes to fix that so that my reporting will look correct. Okay? So there are several ways that we can actually pull our data out. So for example, we always start with a simple query. Okay? So understanding your data to pull the data out for the actual query writing. So we always want to test our data to make sure that the actual data is there correctly. So I got a simple one here. Let's take a look at customers. Okay, so we got a simple query here that looks at the customer, the company name. We got the order date, unit price, quantity, and we're pulling it from a couple of different tables. Okay, and I'm going to run this to make sure my database correct. Sorry, let's do this one, and that is going to be SQL. There we go. Boom. Boom. He doesn't show up. Okay, so we'll fix that. Database is not there. All right.
Let's create a new query on that.
Or how about this? I'm not a fast typer, so I did these ahead of time. How about that? So let's find another one. Let's do employees. There we go. Okay. So on this one was built simply to demonstrate the difference between date formats as well. So I'm going to look at my data and I want to make sure that my data is actually correct first. So we always start with a very simple query. Okay, so in this query I'm pulling employee ID, first name, last name, title. Here's one date format. So for example, I cast it so that I can put the date format into the year, month, and day. Or some people like it in a different format, so I'm going to use another tool where I convert this and I'm going to use a certain version being 101, where this is the version that a lot of people like with their actual date. So I'm always going to look at my information to make sure that my information is correct first. Okay? Let's see if we got another one here. That one is employees. Let's take a look at employee info. Okay, so this one, a little more detailed. Got the employee where I actually build, okay, because again, how do I want the data to appear in my actual report? Okay, so instead of being first name and second and last name separate, I'm going to concatenate the two. So I'm going to join them together, first name, a space, last name. So I have the full name, I've got the job description, the hire date. Okay, I'm going to run a formula that's going to calculate, for example, their years of service. So hire date, with respect to today's actual date, is going to calculate their actual years of service, their birth date, and another formula to calculate their age. So I'm going to pull the data in a format that I need to see it in before I actually write my reports. So when I actually run this one, okay, employee ID, name, job description, there's the hire date and their years of service, birth date, age, pay rate, and the calculation of the actual yearly salary. So I'm going to actually pull this data out the way I need to first, and then I'm going to actually use this in my report writing. So generally when you build your queries, for example, you save them. Copy and paste would be your friend in this one, unless you're a fast typer unlike me. I still use these three fingers. Been doing this for 20 years and still use these three fingers. Works for me. But we're going to make sure our data is correct. Okay? So what we're going to look at now is how do I build my actual reports. Okay? So we want to use our report builder. We're going to look at designer as well when we actually do the report. So what we're going to do is we're going to see how do I actually use this directly from the actual website itself. And real quick before I press on, let's do this. This is what it would look like in SharePoint. So if you are using SharePoint as well, so I have a reporting library, okay, and here's a sales order detail report. So when I actually click on the report, it's actually going to do the generating of the report directly in SharePoint itself. So this is what SharePoint integration of the report would actually look like, okay? And this one, we do have some parameters where we look at the order ID. I got 4 pages, so we can actually filter based on the actual order ID, and we can go page to page, okay? And again, this can also be exported into Excel, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to build our report from Builder, okay? Now, there's a few things we have to build a report. You've got to have the data source. Data source is going to be your database. We have to have the data set. The data set is simply the query results, or the actual query that pulls from the actual data source. And then we're going to use that to build the report, and then we're going to upload the report to a specific location within our report writing services. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, because that's where I'm going to put these reports, and I'm going to call this one Northwind Reports. Okay? So there's my Northwind report. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in this folder, because everything that I'm going to do, I'm going to save to this location. Now, I can actually do a data source. When I create this data source is going to add it to this specific location. The reason we're going to add a data source is because when your users come in here to build a report, they don't have to know where the database exists. They don't have to understand the language needed to add the actual data source. We're going to put the data source in this location, so when they build the report, they connect directly to this source. So we're going to do our data source. Now for the data source, we'll name this one Northwind Data Source. Okay? And we can give it a description. And what we're going to do is we're going to do our connection. So we're going to tell it to connect to the actual database. So I'm going to do data source equals MIA SQL, which is the name of my server, colon, and then I'm going to tell it which database that I actually want to use. So I'm going to do initial catalog equals Northwind. Okay? I'm going to tell it I can apply credentials. So I'm going to do as the user that's reviewing the report is going to be used for the credentials right now. And I'm going to test my connection. Looks good. And we create it. So now that data source is added to the reporting services in the appropriate Northwind reports folder. Okay? Now, I can build a data set as well. So if I say data set, now what this is going to do is this is going to take me out to Report Builder. So it's going to ask you, do I want to allow this? I'm going to allow it. It's going to open up SQL Server 2016 Report Builder. Okay? So this is the one that I just created. Now I can say browse other data sources if this one did not exist. This one is already there, so I'm going to say create. Okay? Now, there's several different ways we can create the actual data set or the query for this. We can do it based off the tables that are in the data source, and then we add our fields, build the relationships. That's kind of the hard way. Okay? Why reinvent the wheel? I already wrote the query. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the query to build the actual data set. So I'm going to simply say import. Now when I go to import, because I saved it from earlier, okay, there we go. The one I want to use for this one will be customers. Okay, and there's the actual query. I'm going to test it, and there it is right here. So what this actually does is this shows me the company name, order date, unit price, and quantity. So the query works. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to save him, and I'm going to save this data set. So what it does is it allows me to point straight to the server where I actually have it. So there's my folder, Northwind Reports, and I'm going to name this one Customer Data Set. Okay, and okay. And we saved it. So if I close Report Builder now, and I refresh him, oops, there's my data set. So now I have a data set, and I have the source right here. Now, I want to build an actual report. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. Notice that on both my sources and the data set, I have these ellipses. So if I click on the ellipsis, this allows me to actually manage the actual properties of that data set. Here's what's important about that. Do I want everybody accessing that data set? Do I want everybody accessing the data source? So I can come in here and I can do certain properties. I can do a data preview, whether I want to allow it or not. Look at the data source that goes with it, what's dependent on him. Caching, I just mentioned the information about how long do you want that data to be cached before it has to start over, and security. I can apply security to this data set. Here's how this works with security. If you do not have permission to that object being the source or the data set, not only can you not access it, you don't even see it. It disappears. So when you actually log in, okay, if you don't have access to it, it's not even visible to you by default. Okay? Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to build a report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going into my Northwoods reports. I'm going to do new, and I'm going to do a paginated report. So this is going to take me back out to my report builder. But this time, because I told it I wanted a report, these are different ways I can build a report. So I can do a table, a matrix wizard. It'll walk me through chart, map, or start with a blank report. So I'm going to go with this one. Okay? Now, it wants to know about my data set. What did I name that data set? This one here? Y'all sure? Customer data set. You sure? This is called a senior moment for those of you who don't understand that. All right, so we're going to do it based off of this, or I can say browse or create a data set. So I'm going to say next. Now, what I'm going to do is I get to put my fields, either in rows, columns, and do some type of calculation for them. So we'll keep this simple. So I'm going to put my company name in the row. I'm going to put the order date in the row. And then I'm going to sum the unit price and the quantity. Next. Now, I get to show it block, subtotal below, subtotal above, step, subtotal above. I'm going to go with block, subtotal below. Okay? And then I'm going to choose to allow to expand and collapse it, because it's going to put that data in groups for me. So I'm going to click next and finish. Now what I'm going to do is move him over, okay, and make sure that we have enough space there. Now, I can run this and preview it before I even save it to the actual server. So I'm going to preview this to see what it actually looks like. So that's a glimpse of it. Notice that we can actually make him wider if necessary. Okay, so it looks decent. I'm going to save him, and I'm going to drop him in Northwoods Reports, and we're going to call this customer sales. Okay, save it. So what it did is it uploaded it to the server. I'm going to close my builder. Not sure why he opens, because he wants to know if we want to upgrade our report builder. And I'm going to refresh this. Where's my report? There he is. So now when I click on it, it generates the report. Okay. Now we told it to expand or collapse. So now if I click on him, we see where that has been generated from. So here's this customer. Here's the order dates, the unit prices. There's the total for that actual customer as well. So now we have a report that we built. That report has actually been uploaded to the server. If I need to edit this report, I can tell it to open this report back up into Builder and make changes to it. Okay? So far so good? It's pretty cool, isn't it? Y'all got any questions so far? I'll take a little small pause for questions. Any questions? Not yet? Okay. Okay. Is this something that you guys are considering using right now? I know Charleston County. Who all was from the solicitor's office? Who did I have? You were here earlier.
Well,
Charlie Young.
Well, I wasn't here earlier.
You wasn't.
I
Charlie
was.
Young was here for a
Yeah.
class, and he had some people that needed some services for, and he talked about going to report writing services. Is this what y'all using now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And you do report writing, sir?
Yes, that's all my job
This
specific.
is all you do.
He writes the reports, I know the data. So
Very good. Very good. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to briefly demo. So in our classes that we actually have, the classes are hands-on. So when you come for any type of SQL class, for example, I don't have to talk this much. So I do a small presentation, and then you guys get labs. The labs are hand-on. You actually do the work. And, you know, for my classes, Jesse will tell you, I love when people make mistakes. I hate when things work right all the time in a classroom setting, because that's not real world. You guys get back, you're going to have problems. So in class, I encourage problems. I encourage people to click on things that you have no business clicking on, and we see how to actually fix those items as well. Okay? Now, the last part that I'm going to show is real simple. I want to edit an existing report. Okay? Now, and I already got the report for time constraint purposes. So, for our reports, I'm going to go to my these reports. Okay. So I have a report called Internet Sales. Okay. So in Internet Sales, when this one actually opens, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it into Report Builder. So here we have a report that looks at Internet Sales, and basically it starts with the year 2010 and it moves up. This one has roughly 1,374 pages of information. Okay, so we start now. This is at the end, 2014. So if I go all the way back to the beginning, we started 10, move our way up. Now, if I chose to edit this report, what I would do is I would go back to reports, real simple, and for this one, I'm going to click on the ellipses, and I get to manage this report, and I get to say edit in Report Builder. So what this is going to do is it's going to open this up in Report Builder. Now, in our design view, here's our report. This is where we can do groupings. If I want to group all like customers and then get summarized information, I can do that. And then note over here, this is our report data. So over in the report data, this is where I can add parameters. I'm going to show you what that actually looks like. I can put images in, so anytime I go to access this report, all of this information is saved. Here's our data source, and here's our data set. So we actually have a data set that looks at Internet Sales, is what it's been named, and these are the fields that we actually pull. Okay? Now, what I did was I went into this report and I edited this report so that it would have parameters. Okay? So I'm going to close this one, and I have another one that is Internet Sales by year. Okay? This report and this report are the exact same report. Difference being I added parameters so it allows me to, one, filter by year, and two, when you initially open the report, do you really want to see 2010 data? You want to see the latest data first. So in this one, I'm going to say Edit in Report Builder. Okay. Now, same report. One. Here's what I did. I built a parameter. So in SQL, anytime you see the @ symbol, that's a parameter. Parameter simply means I'm going to prompt you for some data. Okay. Now, my parameters include